Hello everyone, and welcome to those who are new to my channel. We're going to be having a go at some flowers today. It's a popular subject and a wonderful subject as well. It's great that it's summertime and there are so many of them about. Tanya and I went on a walk yesterday and it sort of reminded me about flowers. Sometimes I forget about them because I'm so busy doing what I'm doing and painting landscapes and traveling here and there, but sometimes you don't really have to go far to get your subject matter, and flowers are great. We'll be painting the flowers today from life, and I feel that painting from life is the best way to paint. You see everything, all the right colours and all the right tones, and it's a little bit more complicated painting from photographs because they don't necessarily have that right, and particularly tones. What we're going to do today is paint some simple flowers, not really complicated flowers. You don't want to do too complicated flowers in watercolour. It's such a tricky medium anyway. So we're going to have simple flowers. These are sort of that I've picked in the countryside, so wildflowers, so nothing complicated, and also something that everyone has access to. So the first thing that we've got to tackle is the drawing, and the drawing is crucial. There's no getting around it. And it's a drawing that I'm kind of trying to do simply. I'm not trying to overcomplicate the drawing. I'm really trying to locate things. So what I'll do is I'll put my scale in. So I'll put, let's say that's the bottom of the picture and that's the top of the picture. So there's my scale. So everything's got to go into this area, and it's really important to give you that scale. Right, let's start the painting, and I'm going to paint it generally to begin with. So one flower is going to be there, the main flower is going to be there, sort of thing. A leaf coming up, another one there. So you see, I'm not trying to overcomplicate it at the moment. Just trying to keep it as simple as I know how to. As I say, watercolour is complicated enough without us making it even more complicated. So just roughly trying to place things in the right spot. I'm not pressing very hard with this pencil, so it might be tricky to see, because I don't really want the pencil lines to come through too much later on. If you get the scale wrong, that's fine, you can just redraw it. Maybe expand it up or down. But remember, flowers are an interesting shape, but there's no perfection in them. There are lots of, you can have one flower, but there are lots of different shapes of that one flower. So if you do make a mistake with the drawing, don't worry too much about it. You know, it'll still look like the flower. So that's pretty much the drawing done. I don't know whether how much you can see or how much the camera's picked up of the drawing. I don't want to press too hard because I don't want the pencil marks to come through the painting. Another interesting point about painting from life is that the videography of the flowers that you're seeing is going to be a slightly different view from what I'm painting. We've tried to make it the same, but it's never going to be the same as how I see it in life. So making the first marks, and just a question of working out what I'm going to tackle first, and I think I'm going to tackle the orange flower in the middle of the picture. So I don't have orange, but I do make up orange with yellow, that's cadmium yellow, and cadmium red. So those two colours will mix quite nicely to make the orange. Right, have another look. There's lots of different shades as well, so I make up a few different patches for it. Now yellow is a funny colour. It's an opaque colour, so you never quite know how it's going to turn out. Right. What I'm looking for really is tone. So I'm looking for the right colour, the right tone in the picture. Always changing. So I've got my whole palette is full up with these yellow tones. I think I'm going to introduce a little bit of raw sienna as well. Raw sienna is great because it's transparent, so it'll give a little bit of a foil to the other colours. Trying to get these, and they do change colour a great deal. Let's colour down. I tend to leave a barrier of colour when I don't want colours to merge into one. I leave a little line just so they don't do that. Otherwise these will be flooding this flower, which I don't want. Yeah, raw sienna is a great colour for this. They're very complicated things, flowers. They have so many different changes of colour. Observation is the key to flowers, I think. So I'm trying to get lots of different yellows. There's different yellows and different oranges. There's so many of them. It's fascinating. Getting the darker sides, I'm going to add a little bit of burnt umber and ultramarine blue just to get the darker shades in here. The interesting part of flowers is that sometimes you get colours which you don't expect, but you need to somehow darken them. Cerulean blue in there as well. Changing the colour again, so to get to a light part, keeping that variation going. Lots of concentration needed in painting flowers. If I go quiet, that's because I'm really thinking. Lots of little lines as well that appear. Just keep on mixing these. You see the whole palette is full of these colours. Orange is quite a tricky colour really in watercolour because it's opaque. It doesn't have that freshness. It tends to go a little bit dull. Trying to look very, very hard. Mainly looking at values and how the light changes from high light to mid-tone to dark. That's the most important thing in flowers. The paper I'm using today is a knot paper. That's Fabriano Artistico, and it's not really the typical paper to use for flowers. A lot of flower painters use hot press paper, which is very smooth. Keep changing the colours. And then we have a very dark section within the middle of the flower. Just trying to keep it fresh. Change my brush, just a slightly finer brush. So this is a Cassart number 4 round. So I don't want to go too detailed with this picture. I always err on the side of lack of detail. So it's really just a value study if I can get away with it. I think that makes it a little bit fresher. But you do have to put some detail in flowers. It'd be interesting to see whether I put any white paint in at the end. That's going to be quite fascinating. Still trying to work on the values. It's my number one concern. Always is. Always will be. Okay. Now I'm going to head into the centre of the painting, of the flower. Quite a white area. And then the green centre. So it's a yellowy green. Okay, so that's pretty much that done for the moment. So it's a good start. So here's the palette, what it looks like after I've just painted that yellow flower. And you can see I've used the whole palette for that one. It really was a complicated thing. So I'm going to keep on the yellow side now and paint the flower that's just slightly underneath it. So it's much lighter colour. So I'm going to lots of water with this just pure cadmium yellow. And that's going to go in here. Still want to vary the colour as well. There's interesting greens in this one too. it's very interesting to work out and to see how detailed you paint flowers. I think you don't want to paint them too detailed, but it's quite a difficult balancing act. Again, if you paint them with lots of detail, you create a rod for your back and you never finish the painting. And you lose the freshness. So here's a little bit of cerulean blue coming in to this flower. Just has a little bit of greeny tinge to it in places. The shadow comes in. That's good. So that was a much more simple flower, really, and I like it for that. So there's a lot of planning in this type of painting, trying to work out what to do next and the order of things, which is so important. So the next part of it is the sort of burgundy leaf that's underneath here. And I put that there especially because I wanted a darker element to the painting. So that works out really well. Right, let's get some Alizarin crimson and a bit of burnt umber and burnt sienna and some blue, just to get that darkness. It is very dark. See that coming in there, really rich. Interesting shapes, quite random. Make it a little bit more Alizarin crimson around this side. Nice dark element to this part, which I like. You need that contrast. And then blue it up at this side. And then red. So it's had a few colour changes in there. So the next part is working out the colour of the pink flower, and it's an amazing pink flower. No, I don't think I have that colour. So it's going to be Alizarin crimson and a little bit of blue on it. Just very, very bright. Beautiful. Trying to keep it simple. Very nice colour. That's what's so refreshing about flower paintings, really. There are so many wonderful colours. Trying to keep it simple still. I don't want to go into the endless detail approach. So these are quite dark here. Giving it a sense of this a simple shade, not complicated. So the most difficult part now is to try and work out the order of things. I've got the background to do, which is playing in the back of my mind. But we've got these flowers here, these white flowers. So this is the question that we've got now. And I was thinking initially of doing the background now, but I don't think I will. I'm going to do some of the flowers, the white flowers. So they're quite. It's a sort of grey colour, really. But it's a very light colour as well. Just trying to indicate, so a little bit of maybe cobalt blue. That's nice. Maybe a cobalt blue. I was thinking either cobalt or ultramarine blue. But they're very light in shade. So I'm just trying to go and keep just a hint of them. So not light. Because I need to find them, really. So there's bits, because I want to keep them mainly white, but there are definitely shades to them, so quite a complicated part. Trying to pick the right colour. What's going to give it the whiteness is the background. Trying to see the shapes. simply. These are nice. These are much darker because they're facing away from the light, but not that dark. That's given me a hint of where they are as well for the wash that's about to come on the background. Again, the order of things is so important. Yeah. Whew. Okay, a few of these now. Again, just going to capture a little bit of the white flowers. So this is facing away from the light, so it's quite darkish, well, and sort of mid-tone. It's surprising. One of the problems with white is that people say, well, it's white, but they're not white. White is an incredibly subtle colour. There are so many different shades of white. It's a bit like painting on white paper. There's a whole range of different tones you've got there. Yeah, I'm pleased with that. And then you have the next white, which is these. So just a little bit there. They do change so much. And the problem that we've got with flowers really is that they are infinite. The detail is infinite. There is no point where you could say you could stop. So even if you have a photographic way of painting, you still have to interpret it because you can't just carry on and on and on and on. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So the next part really is one of the most important parts, and that's the background. And the background of these flowers is such an important part because that's what's going to bring out the flowers. And it's a tonal thing really. So we need to contrast the flowers with the background. So here we go. So I'm going to give it a little bit of so maybe burnt umbery in one way, blue. So there's a little bit of faith with this because I don't see this. I'm making this up in my mind. Right. So here we go. So a nice sort of darkish colour to begin with. So I'm using my big Raphael brush. So we're going to come down to the flowers, and this is where it really is important. So, and I don't want to let it's got to be quick. So this is going to hint at all the flowers. So the edge of the flowers. So trying to just hint it to something called negative space. So I'm trying to make it come out. So it's the background that's bringing out the shape of the flower. So it's quite complicated, really. But I've still got to keep the paint going in other places. You don't want to get it to dry too much. You want to keep on going. So it's a big rush. Keep the edge going. So in many ways, it's the darks that give light to the painting. So I'm trying to work all over so that I don't get too dry an edge anywhere on this layer. Keep the edge moving. What I'm trying to do really is trying to keep it like a tonal scale. So I'm trying to look at areas and say, well, that should be darker and that should be lighter. So that the flowers are showing me what shade the background should be. Carry on to the top, keeping it going. So the background is doing most of the shape. Keep this wash going. It's very easy to let it dry and you get a nasty mark on it. Make a slightly smaller brush now. So my Raphael number 10. Hopefully I can keep this going. Try and paint lots of these little colours, these little flowers. Very intense part of the painting, this. So if I go quiet, it's just I'm concentrating. So I'm trying, the best description is trying to draw the flower with the background. Paint the flower with the background. So I'm not actually painting the flower at all. There you go. They suddenly start appearing when you put a dark line round it. So trying to remember to keep some lighter shades of the flower as well. Not trying to paint completely to the edge of the shaded part of the flowers. Getting there. Slowly but surely. Sometimes it's very easy just to paint the flower in isolation because the background is a problem. Some of the botanical paintings are like that. So I'm trying to make this wash a little bit warmer now because the flowers are quite blue. So if I paint the background a bit warmer, then they'll stand out just that little bit more. Yep. Go back to blue a bit. But you see how they're sort of coming out now. So that's where the order was very important. Whether I painted the flowers first or the background. And I think I was right in painting the flowers first. The stem comes in there. So now I'm approaching the redder flower, so now I'm going to make the background go a little bit bluer, just to make sure I contrast it against that flower. There's the stem. That. Almost there. Start heading down to the bottom. Change my brush to the bigger brush again. There we go. Paint a little bit of the shadow of the glass. There. Whew. That was intense. So heading back into the more burgundy colours now. A bit of Alizarin crimson, burnt, ultramarine blue. So there's a very dark bit here, which is pretty. It's nice to give it the contrast between that and the previous one, and the lower flower. Then you have this one, which is Slightly different. A lighter shade because it's reflecting the sun, the light outside. Trying to get the values right. Let's head back into a little bit of greenery, and maybe a bit of also a bit of hooker's green. Trying to connect all the flowers. This greenery sort of brings it together a bit, makes you see what it is. The green sort of, these connecting parts stops it being so abstract. Otherwise there's sort of floating areas of colour. So that's helped it a lot. So still carrying on down the painting, to keep on with the greenery. So you've got this wonderful leaf coming in here, which I've left bits out for, white patch for. But they always change colour. That's what's, you can't just paint in one colour. There's always that secondary shade that comes into these things. Looking is such an important part of painting. The phrase that's quite a good one is doing more looking than putting. So you look much more than you paint. Right, just going to focus on the centre of these. It's quite dark around this side. Observation skills, I think, are the most important parts of painting, and much more important than technique even. And if you don't see it, you can't paint it. So to look and to develop your aesthetics is really important. So I'm just going to correct a few things. Like that part of the background went in a bit too much. It sort of needs to be whiter there. Whether I can change it too much, I don't think I can. Yeah, so I'm just trying to get the feeling that it's a shape, the shape of the flower, without going into the complexity. And that is the difficulty of flowers. You don't want to go into the complexity of it. Okay, so back into that leaf, try and describe it a bit more. Stem coming down. Does almost look like a flower, but it's not. Put a bit of cerulean blue on it, at the very top. It's quite reflecting light. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to the top surface here, just to make sure people recognise it as a daisy. I think it's a daisy. Let's get into the actual glass now, and glass is a very interesting thing too. It's all interesting. Again, it's picking out the values. That's everything. So I think it's quite a blue sort of thing, glass. So we'll start off with a bit of blue at the top. Just trying to capture those lighter tones. It's quite light. Again, keeping it simple is everything. It's a shot glass, I think. Everything is a value study, and how you judge those values is critically important. Some nice lights down here, so I've managed to keep. And then you have the shadow of the glass. Okay, because the light's coming from that way. It's sort of backlit really, the flowers. Okay, trying to fill in this little section here now, which I missed. Trying to get it, maybe it's quite handy that it sort of fills in this side of the glass, just to make it stand out a little bit more. So what we're going to do now is to do the glass, the stems in the glass, and that should really bring it on. So lots of greens. So Hooker's green I'm going to use, which is a good green. Maybe a bit of Cerulean blue, that's a nice shade. And we're just going to start introducing some of these stems. Changing the colour. Lots of variety of stems. And lots of shades, Always important to change the colour of it. Some red ones in there as well, which I think would be nice to include. So a bit of Alizarin crimson, blue. Just a few spots of them. I'm going to try and get a little bit more shade here, where the bottle thickens. So just going to put a few more marks in this leafage here just to give it a little bit more shape. Just going to darken off this little section here, just to give it a sense. So it fades away. So what I am going to do now is just to add a few pencil marks to it, just to bring out a little bit more shape. I think that would help it a little bit. Not too much. Maybe a few in here. But as again, not too much. Almost nothing actually. The more I do it, the more I think, maybe not. I won't put any white paint into it. I think that would be a bit overkill. Right, so I'm looking at the painting now, and I think the background's a little bit too plain. I need to create balance. Because there's more flowers this side, I think I need to balance it to create the weight coming the other side. So I'm going to take a bit of a risk and paint something on the other side of the picture. So maybe up here, so I've got some blues mixed up, blues and browns mixed up. So I'm going to take from here and I'm going to come down here just to, I think, balance the picture more than anything else out. I just felt it needed something else going on. Almost like a curtains appearing. These are all sort of experiments really, and sometimes you can make a horrible mistake doing it, but I think it just needs to bring this side up a bit. Hope you agree with that. Right, so the last thing to do is just sign it. So bottom left, I think. James Potter. So here's the finished painting, and overall I'm pleased with it. And it's a fascinating subject, flowers, and there is a frustrating element to it as well, because there's so much detail, it's so complex. And I remember I read a few years ago in one of the books I've got on Sargent, he was painting a picture of poppies. He was probably about 30 at the time. And it was one of the only times that he became frustrated with the painting. He almost threw it up and did, I give up, he said. And he did finish the painting, but he did note, or it was noted that he did struggle with them. And then flowers are complicated things. And I've tried to depict them in a simple way, an impressionistic way, where the white of the paper is the white of the flower, and trying to reserve that for the highlights of the painting. And I think it worked pretty well. And I think there's very much an impressionistic feel with the painting. I hope you can have a go at this subject. It is a marvellous subject. I very rarely paint flowers. If it's maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years, I'll actually paint flowers. I always enjoy it, but what I find interesting about it is that when you can see, when you can observe things, and when you can notice things, you can paint anything really. It doesn't matter what it is. And flowers come into that as well. If you can look and see, then you can do it. But what I notice with a lot of students is that they imagine things. They don't actually really look. They're thinking from their memory, and that's a bit of a problem, I think. So if you can, the next time you paint, just think, I'm just going to look at it and just see it for what it is, and try to keep memory out of it. Perhaps when you start these flower paintings, if you haven't done it before, maybe it's a good idea just to start with one flower and then build up your confidence to a group of flowers. That might be an easy way to ease yourself into the whole flower painting world. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that demonstration. I hope you got something from it. Hopefully it was about the impressionistic style and keeping it simple. That's my main message in all of my videos. I hope you enjoyed it again, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.